Hello, this is Dan Ferrisi, Group Director of Content and Editorial, Industrial and Tech at Emerald, here at the HDBaseT Alliance booth at ISE 2026, celebrating 15 years of the HDBaseT Alliance. So happy to be joined today by Chris Pinder of HDA and Steven Cogels from PlexusAV. Thank you so much for joining me.
Our pleasure. My pleasure.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you.
So we're going to be talking about signal distribution, talking about HDBaseT and AV over IP. And I want to start with the whole idea that I think there's a false dichotomy at this point where you think it only has to be one, only has to be other. But really there's a complementarity in some situations, isn't there? HDBaseT absolutely will always have a place, and AV over IP probably has a place as well in some situations. You want to talk about that, Steven?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It's sometimes we are tempted just to set two technologies against each other while they completely complement each other. And HDBaseT and AV over IP are a very good example of that, right? HDBaseT will always have its place in certain applications, and AV over IP has benefits that brings to customers as well. So it's not like you need to go left or right. You can go both ways, absolutely.
It's not a zero-sum game. Do you agree with that, Chris?
I do agree. I think the most important thing is to understand who the client is, what the application for the solution you're delivering is, because if it's a very large display and say it's a showroom situation and this is a high-end display and they're trying to show the absolute best quality you can get from the display, then you need to pick a type of technology that doesn't introduce any degradation whatsoever into the signal path. So something like HDBaseT 3.0 is going to be perfect for that application. Whereas in a sports bar situation where the viewer isn't so discerning, they just they're having a few beers, they don't really care so much, they're quite far from the screen. Maybe AV over IP is the right solution in that situation. It's choosing the right solution for the right application.
I think that's a very, very good point. And certainly if you have a very large display, for example, and you're using something other than HDBaseT and you get that degradation, you don't want the client to be like, this looks horrible. And that could potentially happen if you do not have the fidelity of the signal that HDBaseT is able to protect. Steven, what would you add as far as HDBaseT goes, as far as some of the situations for which it's well suited, some of the benefits of it? As you said, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not pitting one against the other. But where does HDBaseT, from your point of view, really shine?
So for me, it really has a very strong proposition, especially in dedicated rooms, right? So situations where there's less need for the signal to travel throughout a building or through other locations, there's where HDBaseT really has a strong proposition. So that is where we see our customers combining the two as well. So those type of applications.
Is there anything else you would add, Chris, as far as benefits of HDBaseT, other than, of course, as you said, the complete fidelity of the original image?
HDA have been a HDBaseT adopter for over 10 years. And what appealed to us about HDBaseT from day one is the sheer simplicity of how plug and play the technology is. You don't necessarily need a third-party network switch, which you do with AV over IP, which, depending on how competent you are as an installer, getting into IT, the world of IT, might not be something you're interested in, especially if you're coming from an AV background where it's mainly coaxial cable in the past or analog cable. Moving to HDBaseT was a much easier step than moving to AV over IP and learning about VLANs and IGMP and all these extra things. So for me, HDBaseT offers a very simple, dependable, trustworthy solution that is very hard to criticize. And that, for our particular customers, is of a great importance to them.
As you said, you've been part of the alliance, part of the ecosystem for a decade or more now. Steven, I know you're kind of relatively newer to this ecosystem, but what drew you into it, and what do you think you're adding to it? Because it's not just what you're getting, but also what you're giving.
So we are brand new with the HDBaseT Alliance, right? But of course, we've known HDBaseT technologies for a long time. We know the benefits. For us, the primary reason was to be able to build that bridge, right? Our AV over IP solution is based on an open standard, which means is like we don't want to lock people in. We don't want to lock them into not being able to use different technologies. For instance, in the IP field, that means is like there are a lot of different signals out there, right? A lot of different protocols that people use. If you want to lock somebody in and you're only using one protocol, essentially means just rip everything out and change to our system. And same thing for HDBaseT, right? So if a customer wants to move towards an AV over IP solution, they have a big deployment of HDBaseT, they can just combine the two. And like I said before, if there's a need for moving those signals from A to B, or maybe even letting them travel through a different country or a different city, then doing that with AV over IP is much more flexible than HDBaseT. But still, in the building itself, in the room itself, HDBaseT is a strong solution for that. So we're all about just building that bridge between the two. And we don't need to decide between going left or right.
I think that bridge is so important, too. I think human nature is to be very dichotomous, left versus right, up versus down, hot versus cold. It's always two things butting up against each other. But building a bridge from one to the other, talking about complementarity, it really is kind of refreshing. But I think it also has the virtue of being true. What you're saying is correct.
Yeah. And I think if you look, for instance, so the open standard that we use is IPMX. And we are working with our direct competitors that are developing other IPMX solutions. So it's not us versus them. No, we're carrying that forward together. So that open mentality and that vendors working together instead of trying to force the customers into your own ecosystem. That's to me, that's the old way of doing things. We're going towards more and more IT-centric solutions. And everything needs to work together. That's what everybody wants ultimately. And being open, using an open standard, embracing other technologies like HDBaseT for us is just, it's second nature. It's part of our DNA.
Embracing openness, embracing the frictionless. I completely agree. Anything you would add, Chris? Closing thoughts?
Just to be devil's advocate on that point, and to add a comeback to that is. HDA, our main customers, are doing much simpler types of installations. So we're a British company. We have a lot of pubs. I know you do in the Netherlands as well. Pubs with maybe 4, 5, 6 displays. And the operator of the system is going to be a barmaid or a bar manager. It could be a different person each night. And what they're looking for is a very simple, fast to deploy, very dependable, easy to maintain system. And that's really where HDBaseT cannot be beaten, because you buy one box, you have your central hub, you have your display receivers, the same cable to each. It's a one-box solution for a simple installation like that. So often you can come to a show like this and you're wowed by the incredibly complex array of scenarios that you can deliver with something like the IP stuff, a video wall there, a screen there, okay. But there are also thousands and thousands in the mid-market and lower market that just want a very simple, dependable solution, and that's where HDA is strong, and that's where HDBaseT for us is the perfect technology to use.
And thank you for that as well. I mean, I almost think about it kind of like a pyramid. The base of the pyramid is where the broadest opportunity is, and I think you're kind of referring to that base of the pyramid and what they need. They don't need anything that's incredibly complex, however technically marvelous it might be. They're looking for something that's kind of plug and play and easy.
That's exactly what I was saying.
And then moving on up the pyramid from there to stuff that's a bit grander and more impressive.
Yeah, we know our lane, we stay in our lane. If it moves up the pyramid, we probably hand them over to somewhere like PlexusAV, where they can give a more hybrid solution and a much broader array of tools.
Well, Steven, Chris, I really appreciate it. Great conversation. I'm looking forward to continuing this dialogue in the months ahead, hopefully in the pages of Commercial Integrator, because we're going to stay on top of all of these issues.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. My name is Dan Ferrisi. I am Group Director, Content and Editorial, Industrial and Tech at Emerald, here at the HDBaseT Alliance booth at ISE 2026, where we are celebrating 15 years of HDBaseT.